Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. Are you ready to start today's story? Let's get started. Imagine discovering that your perfect life is actually a well-woven lie. What would you do? Follow Ethan Bennett's footsteps and unravel the layers of betrayal and vengeance. An unexpected sighting, the end of a marriage. How does Ethan rebuild his life from the ashes while finding true love? Don't go away. This is more than just a story, it's a journey of the soul. When trust is completely shattered, how do Ethan and Megan find the light of hope in their shattered lives? In the next few minutes, join us for a true story about betrayal, self-discovery, and rebirth. It felt like a knife to the heart. She was my everything, but that night I caught her with another man. Their intimacy was like a cruel joke, my beautiful wife, laughing and loving someone else. I confronted her. The truth was a bitter venom, her guilt was my hell. I stalked him, every step fueled by burning rage. When we faced off, it was pure fury. I wanted him to suffer, to feel the agony of betrayal. Now, staring at the ruins of our lives, I ask myself, was it revenge or just madness? My name is Ethan FZ, but most people call me Jake. My parents moved from West Germany to Canada in 1979, before Germany became one country again. My mom was pregnant with me when they left. I was born in Canada. They arrived in Montreal, where my dad looked for work as a goldsmith. He was trained in Germany, so he found a job without much trouble. I was an only child for a while, then my brother Michael was born, a few years later. Today, Mike is a pro soccer player for the Montreal Impact. My dad did well in his job and opened his own jewelry shop after Mike was born. He makes good money, and my parents live in a nice house in Beaconsfield. They even spend some winter months in Florida. Dad has 2 skilled workers in his shop now, so he doesn't have to be there all the time. When I talk to Mom, she seems very happy with their life. I'm glad for them. In school, I was an average student. I liked girls and hockey as much as studying. I graduated with a C+ average, except for English, which I did well in, but that wasn't very helpful in Quebec. Right after school, I went job hunting. My spoken French was just okay, though my written French was better. It was tough finding a good job in French-speaking Quebec, especially with the party kuka in power. They weren't very welcoming to English speakers, and it was hard for me to get a good job. Finally, I got a job with a building materials company from Vancouver that was starting up in Montreal. I worked in customer service for a year before a job opened up in Vancouver. It was a bigger office with better pay, so I applied. I was surprised when I got the job. I thought there would be tough competition, but later found out my French skills made the difference. I never understood why that mattered in British Columbia. I moved to Vancouver and knew right away it was my new home. It was very different from Montreal, it felt more modern and like the West Coast. I arrived during a nice summer, which made it even better. One trip to the beaches, and I was hooked. It might have been the bikinis, the mountains, or the ships in the bay. I didn't care. This was where I wanted to be, and I still feel the same way. I made friends both at work and through hockey games at a local rink. I hadn't played junior hockey, but I loved the game. Being single and with free time, I joined a beer league. I played defense on a team from an electrical company. I found out it was mainly because I could skate backward, but it was fun and kept me active. At the end of the season, we had a barbecue for the team, family, and friends. That's where I met Leah Wilson. Leah and I clicked because she was also from Montreal, from a place called Dollar de Oro near the DVAL airport. We hit it off and started dating. We exchanged numbers, and I called her a few days later for a date. She said yes, and that's how it started. Leah is pretty not a knockout, but still very attractive. One day, I snuck a look at her driver's license. She's 170 centimeters, 57, and weighs 60 kilograms, 132 pounds. She has short dark brown hair that's easy to take care of. She calls it her wash and wear hair. Leah doesn't wear much makeup, but she doesn't need to. She has a nice figure, medium-sized chest, slim backside, and great legs. She looks elegant in slacks and has good posture, which adds to her looks. She also looks good in a bikini. We dated regularly, and after a year, I proposed. Leah accepted, though not right away. We had talked about our future, and she wanted to be sure I would be more than a customer service rep. I told her I had asked for a sales job and was promised a chance when a spot opened. That settled her mind. We had been intimate for a few months. Leah was enthusiastic but a bit traditional in bed. She wasn't into certain things but enjoyed what I did for her. We were together a few times a week, and she seemed happy. It wasn't wild, but I didn't think she had much experience. Leah worked as a lab technician for medical testing around the province. She was proud of her job and liked her co-workers, who were mostly women. When we planned our future, we looked at our combined incomes. If I got the sales job, we'd make about $90,000, not counting any bonuses. It might even let us buy a house in the hot market. So Leah said yes to my proposal based on me getting the sales job. Thankfully, it came a few months later, and we set a wedding date. I called my parents and Mike to share the good news, and they were very happy for me. Leah said her parents were a bit more careful but still happy. Both promised to come to the wedding. We got married in a small church in the suburbs. It had an open date the next April. I met Leah's family for the first time, and they were cool toward me. I wasn't sure why, but Leah told me not to worry. My parents were cheerful and welcomed Leah warmly, but again, her parents didn't seem to like my parents much. Leah seemed to get along well with Mike, maybe because he was a professional athlete, or they just hit it off. At least it made the reception less awkward. We had a short honeymoon to Victoria and Seattle before coming home and settling into our rented apartment. I was working hard at my new sales job, and my boss was pleased with my work. I had some goals to reach this year, and by mid-year, I was sure I would make them. Leah was happy working in the lab. Her hours were steady, from 7:30 in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My hours were different. I spent 4 or more hours driving to see customers and got home after 6, often stuck in heavy traffic. Things were going pretty smoothly for us. We eventually saved enough money to make a down payment on a townhouse in the suburbs. We celebrated our 3rd anniversary a week after moving in. This was our stepping stone to a bigger home someday. We talked about starting a family, but Leah was firm in saying she wanted to wait until we were more financially secure. She couldn't say when that would be, but since we were both young, not yet 25, there was no rush. Like in any marriage, our intimate life slowed down a bit. Before marriage, we were intimate 4 or 5 times a week, except during her period. That dropped to 3 times weekly after the first 3 years, and then once or twice a week. When you're busy, you don't notice these things right away, but eventually, I did and brought it up to Leah. Leah, we don't seem to be intimate as often as before. Any reason why? I asked one night after dinner while sitting on the back balcony. No, why would there be? Her answer sounded strange, maybe even a bit defensive and aggressive. I don't know. We used to be together at least 3 times a week, but not lately. Well, we're both working hard, and you can't expect us to have the energy every night, she said. Her tone was still a bit aggressive. I suppose, but I do miss it. Being with you is something I really enjoy, I tried to sound inviting. You'll have to get used to enjoying it less often for now. I'm not always in the mood, she replied. I wasn't getting much sympathy, so I decided not to push it any further that night, but it would come up again. Our intimate life didn't get worse, and I got used to the reduced frequency, thinking it was what Leah felt comfortable with. I wanted more, but I realized that not all couples want the same things at the same time. When I thought about it, I couldn't complain. We were happy and successful, heading for a long and fruitful marriage. It might be hard to believe, but a happily married man can have a best friend who is a woman. It happened to me, and surprisingly, there was no romantic interest involved. It was purely a best friends relationship. This started when Megan and Ol Foster moved in next door. Our townhouse was an end unit, so we only had one neighbor. Megan and Ol were an interesting couple. She stayed home with their 2 children in elementary school. Ol was a car salesman at a local Chevrolet dealer. Megan had a no-nonsense attitude, a sharp mind, and a wicked sense of humor. She was 30 and had been married to Ol for 10 years. She was a bit taller than Leah and had a well-developed body. Her hair was reddish blonde, curly, and cut short. Her eyes were deep blue, and she had a bright smile with beautiful white teeth. Her skin had some acne scars, but she didn't seem bothered by it. She openly said that Ol had gotten her pregnant and then did the right thing by marrying her. They had 2 children, Annabeth, a 10-year-old in grade 5, and Bradley, a 7-year-old in grade 2. Ol, or Alvin when Megan was annoyed with him, was the same age as Megan but had a different personality. He was just under 6 feet tall with red curly hair, a rosy complexion, and big white teeth. He wore flashy suits with bright ties, a fake Rolex watch, and a big gold ring with a red stone on his right pinky. If someone told him this was what a car salesman should wear, Ol believed them. Listening to him, you'd think he was the manager of the dealership instead of just a regular salesman. He was the kind of guy you either liked because he was always cheerful, or he annoyed you because he never knew when to stop. Sadly, I fell into the latter category. Leah didn't think much of Megan but seemed neutral toward Ol. On the other hand, like Megan's straightforwardness, and we became good friends over the next few months. I also liked her kids. Annie, who was mostly called that, was polite and cute as a button. She would be a real heartbreaker in a few years. Her mother was pretty, but Annie would be something special. Brad was a fun-loving kid who loved to play and was always in a good mood, like his sister. He was very polite, and that meant a lot to me. Leah, unfortunately, didn't want much to do with the kids, which worried me for our future. Was she telling me she didn't want children? She couldn't help but like these 2. Could she, if we were going to have children? I wanted them to be just like Annie and Brad. Last spring, things started to go downhill for us. We had almost saved enough to buy a house after 6 years of marriage, then without any warning, I was called into a meeting at the main office. They told us the company had been sold to our competitor, and our branch would be closed. Just like that, I was out of a job. I had 4 months severance pay plus our savings, but it was a shock and really knocked me back. When I told Leah what had happened, she got mad at me for wasting my years with a company that just vanished, mad at the company, mad at life in general. I felt she was disappointed in me, like I had let her down, that this was my fault. It didn't help my spirits to have her anger on top of everything else. I started job hunting right away, but there were no jobs in my field nearby. Leah would get up, give me a quick peck on the cheek, and head off to work. I would search the job ads, try to set up meetings, and drink more coffee than usual. After 2 fruitless weeks, I was feeling really down, and I guess it showed. One morning, I was sitting on my bedroom balcony with a cup of coffee, staring into the distance when I heard a familiar voice. "Hey, handsome, got any more coffee?" It was Megan, and I had to smile. She had decided to call me handsome for some reason and did so freely, even when Ol and Leah were around. It didn't seem to bother either of them, so I just accepted it. "Come on over, the back door is unlocked. I'll meet you in the kitchen." I was reaching for the cream when Megan walked through the back door into the kitchen and gave me her best smile. Just seeing her helped lift my spirits. "So, what are you doing home in the middle of the morning these days?" "Sick leave?" I asked. "I wish. I got let go the Friday before last. The company sold, and the whole staff is out of work." "Wow, that stinks," she said. "So you're looking for a new job?" "Yeah, unfortunately. I was in a shrinking industry, and it just got smaller. It's pretty much all I know, so I'm not sure what I'll do. I've sent my resume to all the other places, but it doesn't look good. I can try retail, but they don't pay anywhere near what I was earning." She muttered, "Huh." Then I watched her think. I knew Megan well enough to see that she was already thinking of ways to help. It was interesting to see the difference between Leah and Megan's attitudes. I sat quietly, sipping my coffee as Megan pondered. Jake, remind me, when you were in school, what was your best subject? English. I seem to have a feel for it, I mean, writing. I thought about being a writer for a while, maybe working on a newspaper or a magazine, but that's another shrinking industry. Yeah, you said that. I have a friend who's a writer. She writes manuals and instructions. She works from home. All she needs is a computer and an internet connection. She told me she was turning down work because she was so busy. I don't know how much it pays, but she has a new car and a fancy condo in the city. It must pay something. I hadn't thought of that, I admitted. Tell you what, handsome, I'll give her a call. If I can use your phone, you can talk to her. Maybe she can help you out. Great, thank you, Megan. Her name was Paula Woods, and I caught her at the right time. When Megan gave me the phone, I offered to call back later, but Paula said she was taking a break and would be happy to talk. Since I was a friend of Megan's, she had been in the same situation I was in, out of work and needing a job. She had answered an ad in one of the local papers and met with the manager of an import-export business. He needed someone to write manuals and instructions for products from China and other places. The English versions they sent were useless, if not funny. He wanted practical instructions in English for his customers. Paula signed on and never looked back. They keep asking me to find someone who can translate into French, too. They're paying a translation service, but it's very expensive. He wants someone in-house to handle it. He can find bilingual people, but not writers who can do both. He also needs good manuals for machinery. That's not something I can do. Paula gave me the name of the agency importing the machines and the name of her contact. I asked if I could mention her name, and she happily agreed. I passed the phone back to Megan for a quick chat while I poured another coffee for both of us. Megan, you and Paula may have just saved me. I don't know how to thank you. No need. It was great to see you light up again. You looked pretty down this morning, she said. Yeah, well, I don't think Leah has come to terms with our situation yet. She's not happy about me being out of work. It really messes up our plans. Come on, Jake. You didn't get fired. What happened to you happens to many people every day. It's not their fault. It's just how things are. Ol has come home many times feeling low because he was near the bottom of the list that month, worried they might fire him. I'd give him some encouraging words, and he'd feel better the next day and get back to it, she laughed. Sounds like a good plan, I agreed. I was jealous that Megan could cheer Ol up so well while Leah was always negative. No encouraging words from her. I picked up the phone again and called the number Paula gave me, asking for Mr. Louis. He answered in a minute, and I told him that Paula would suggested I call him. I mentioned that I could write in French and create good copy and offered to give him a free sample to prove it. Mr. Louis, who spoke good English, was interested and asked if we could meet that afternoon since I was free. We set a meeting for 2 p.m. I hung up the phone and gave Megan a big hug. You don't know how much this means to me, Megan. I almost had tears in my eyes. I had a chance, and I was going to take it. Megan just smiled and sipped her coffee, glad to help. Megan went home just after 11 o'clock, and I rushed upstairs to shower, shave, and brush my teeth. I picked out a clean shirt, my navy blazer, and tan pants, planning to change after lunch to avoid spilling food on my clean clothes. I met Mr. Louis at 2 that afternoon, and he took me to his office. He was a middle-aged man with a balding head, bad teeth, and a wrinkled suit. I wondered if he couldn't afford proper translation services and was looking for someone cheap. However, Paula said she was happy working with him, so I decided to hear him out. I import many machines from China and Thailand. Some are for making plastic items, some for molding containers, and some for woodworking. The instructions are in Chinese and poorly translated into English, even I can't understand them, so I have to read the Chinese. My customers are not Chinese, so I need clear English instructions now. I want to sell to chain stores, and in Quebec, they need French instructions before accepting my products. I pay high prices for translations and often have to redo them because the translators don't understand the machinery. I need someone who understands the equipment and instructions. He finished speaking and waited. I understand your problem. Let's try it out, and if I can do the work, we can agree on a fair pay. Agreed. Yes, that sounds good. I hope you can do this job, it would help my business, and I would make it worth your while. He promised, why don't you give me an example, and we'll see how it goes. I can work here or at home and bring it back when I'm done. I think my computer is hard to use. He smiled, use your machine, and let me know when you're finished. We can review the results then. Great, show me the instructions, and I'll get started. He walked to a table, took a thin folder from a stack, and handed it to me. Come with me, he said. He took me to the warehouse, which was full of crates and machinery. Some pieces I recognized, others, I didn't. This is the machine your instructions are for. Look it over. If you have questions, ask. I nodded while he stood by me. I compared the drawings in the manual with the actual machine, they looked the same, but appearances can be deceiving. How accurate are the drawings? I asked. Most are good, sometimes they send old drawings with new machines, causing problems. I then have to wait for new drawings from the factory. I have machines I paid for but cannot sell. Very bad for business. I can imagine. This set looks correct, so I'll start. If I have problems, I'll call you. As I said, the first job is a free trial to see if I can do this and make a living from it. He nodded with a smile, that's wise. I got into my car and started for home. I was excited, hoping this would work out. It was different from my previous job but seemed more interesting. If it worked, I'd be happier. However, Leah wasn't impressed. What do you know about machinery? How can you make money from this? I've spoken to someone who already does this for a living. She works from home, which is what I want to do. Oh great. You sit around drinking coffee while I work hard in the lab. Why do you think that if I take the job, it's true? I'd work from home, it would also save money on commuting. Seems like a better situation for us. Show me that you can make a living, Jake. I doubt it. Well, if it was that simple, everyone would do it. She said, remember, I have a knack for machines and some writing skills, plus I speak 2 languages, which isn't common around here. I think I've got a good shot, but I won't know until I try. How much is this person paying you for the job? She asked. Nothing. I'm doing it for free to show I can handle it, then I can figure out how much my time is worth. If I set a price now, it might be too low, and then I'll have trouble raising it later. Great, you're working for nothing on a job you might not be able to do, and you don't know the pay. Just great. She said and walked out of the room towards the kitchen. That warm feeling I had just disappeared. Maybe it would come back if I proved I could do the work and get paid well. Maybe I couldn't wait to start. Right after we finished the dinner dishes, I went to our home office and turned on the computer. I pulled out the English version of the instructions and began reading. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The text was such a mess that explaining how to maintain and operate this machine seemed impossible. I took a deep breath and began. I stopped at midnight when my headache got really bad. My neck hurt from trying to understand the text and typing it out. I managed about 1.5 pages of the 6-page instructions. It was slow, but I was starting to see a pattern. The first paragraph took an hour, but the last one took just under 30 minutes. By the time I turned off the light and headed to bed, Leah was already asleep. I was tired from concentrating so hard. After taking a couple of Tylenol, I slipped into bed and fell asleep almost immediately. When I woke up, Leah was already dressed and eating her usual yogurt and granola breakfast. She didn't drink coffee, so there wasn't any. On the other hand, needed coffee until about 11 o'clock in the morning. I said good morning, and she mumbled something back. 2 minutes later, she was up, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and headed to work. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I went back to our office and reviewed last night's work. I saw a few small errors I had missed, but overall, it looked good. I picked up where I left off and soon was back into it. I was on my second or third cup of coffee when I heard a familiar voice. "Hey there, handsome," Megan called from the back door. I could almost hear her smiling. "Come on in, Megan. Get a coffee. I'm in my office." I heard her open the cupboard and fridge, and a moment later, she walked into the office. "Aren't you a sight this morning?" she said with a laugh. I was in my usual nightwear, t-shirt and boxers. Thankfully, my fly was closed. Just because I haven't shaved, brushed my teeth, showered, or dressed doesn't mean I'm a slob, I replied. Megan laughed. "Good thing you're handsome, handsome. What are you working on?" "I'm on page 3 of 6, translating instructions for the operation and maintenance of a Heavenly Blossom Model 356K14 in thickness planer," I said firmly. Megan burst into laughter again. "Where do they come up with those silly names?" I shrugged. "No idea, and I don't care. This test run is tougher than I thought. I spent 5 hours last night getting the first page and a half done. I think I've got the hang of it now, so it's going faster. I should finish by noon and then can start the French version, and you doing this for free." "Yeah, you sound like Leah," I said with a stern look. "Sorry," she said. I take it she wasn't impressed. "You could say that, but what matters to her are the results. In a day or two, I'll know if this is worth it. Good luck, Jake. I believe in you. You'll prove Leah wrong." That was Megan, always positive and direct. We sipped our coffee in silence for a few minutes before Megan spoke again. "Jake, can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure, go ahead. Do you think you and Leah are happy?" "I mean, really happy?" I stared at my coffee cup and didn't answer. "Never mind, it's none of my business." "I'm sorry I asked," she said quietly. "It's a good question, Megan. A really good one," that's all I said, as I expected. I finished the English version around 11:30 and called Mr. Louis. I told him I'd have the French version done this afternoon and could drop it off at his office. He was surprised and pleased. He told me to come anytime I was ready. That made me feel good about the job. It had been a while since I had written any French, but with my dictionary and a quick lunch, I completed the French version by 2:30 p.m. I reviewed the English version again, then the French one more time. I didn't see any errors, but Mr. Louis would decide that. I dressed in my business clothes and headed to his office to hand in my work. I sat as he looked over my English version, comparing it to the Chinese one he had beside it. I couldn't be sure, but it seemed like he was spot-checking various random paragraphs. I could see him nodding and sometimes marking a word here and there, but overall, he made very few changes. He looked up from my work. "Excellent, Mr. Jake. I will send your French and English versions to our translation service to check if they approve your French. We can make a deal for your services." He called me Mr. Jake from the start because saying faults was hard for him. "How many hours did you spend on this?" he asked. 5 last night and 6 today, 11 in total," I said. "Very well. I will have a check for $660 made out to you. You can pick it up tomorrow," he smiled. I thought we agreed this was a free trial, a test to see if I could do the work. "I am almost sure you can do the work, Mr. Jake. I do not want to take advantage of you. I will pay for good work. I think we can do very good business together." "That's very generous, thank you very much," I said sincerely. "To which company should I make out this check?" he asked. Just to me, I guess, Ethan Fultz." He looked at me seriously for a moment. "May I suggest you form your own company? It will save you much trouble in the future, and it will protect you if there is a problem. I suggest you see a lawyer and get this done." Keep this money separate. You do not want a tax problem, especially if you become successful. He smiled. I do not take out taxes. You have to handle that. You are a contractor in the eyes of the tax office. Thank you for the advice. I'll do just that. I stood up and shook his hand. Please let me know if there is any problem with the French version, I said as I was about to leave. Do you not want your next assignment? He asked, looking surprised. Well, yes, of course, if you think I can do the job, I stammered. He smiled. I think you can. I will be surprised if your French is not as good as your English. I must thank Miss Paula for telling you about me. He gave me another manual, and we walked out back again. After checking the machine and looking at the drawings, I was happy it was a current drawing. We shook hands, and I left for home feeling good. $60 an hour. If I worked 40 hours a week, I could make over $120,000 a year. Was there that much work? The stack on Mr. Liu's desk looked pretty big. I couldn't wait to tell Leah. Maybe this would change her mind about my work. Leah seemed happy that I was being paid and at a good rate. I told her about the stack of work on his desk waiting for me. It cheered her up quite a bit. Maybe things were looking better for us. I felt really good about the future and us. It's funny how quickly things can go from bad to good. I also wanted to tell Megan. She was the one who had given me the idea. I started work on the next manual the next morning. I was just as eager to start as I had been with the first one. This job was easier. First, the machine was simpler, and second, I had learned how to understand what they wanted to say. I finished the English by 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the French before dinner, a total of 8 hours. I would call Mr. Louis first thing in the morning and arrange to give him my work that evening. I called my investment advisor, Carlo Petty, another ex-Montrealer. Carlo, I need your advice. I want to start my own business, and I need the name of a lawyer who can help me do that. Hey, you're starting your own business, he sounded happy. Yeah, translation services. I explained the job to him, and he was excited. Every time I look at something, it's made in China or somewhere in the Far East, you will always have work, he said. I hope you're right. Now about that contact, yeah, talk to Don Simmons. He's right here in this building. He specializes in business law and can get you set up properly. Also, you will need to talk to Betty about the tax situation. She already does your and Leah's taxes, so she'll know what to do with the new business. Thanks, Carlo. I appreciate your help. Maybe I'll have something to save for retirement this year after all. Good luck, Jake. I think you're going to do well in this venture. We Montreal guys know how to make things happen, right? You know, Carlo, say hi to Monique for me. Talk to you later. I called Mr. Louis the next morning, and he was glad to hear from me. He told me that the French translation was perfect, and he was eager to see my next project. I went to his office later that morning and gave him the next manual. Mr. Louis, can we set up something so that I don't have to drive in every day? I can email my translations to you, but maybe if I took a week's worth of work at a time, I could just send you the finished work when it's done. That would be fine. Also, if you agree, I can deposit your payments directly into your account, so I don't have to write a check, and you get your money right away. That's great, but I have to set up a business account first. I'll let you know when that's done. Then we have a deal. I'm very happy to do business with you, Mr. Jake. Do you want me to have a contract written for your services? I thought about that. Why don't I talk to my business advisor and see what he thinks? I'll let you know. Very well, we shook hands, and I left after checking 5 new manuals and 5 machines. It took just over an hour, but it was worth my time. One drawing had a missing part, and even though it was for the right machine, I had to note that in my translation. Other than that, the job seemed pretty simple. By the end of the next week, I had a new career and my own business set up. I called it Precise Word Services, not flashy, but it explained what I did. I registered for a GST number with the federal government, set up a separate bank account, and even had some business cards printed. I also designed my own letterhead to print at home on my lawyer's advice. I wrote up a letter of understanding for Mr. Louis, outlining our deal for translations and the hourly rate. I treated myself to a color laser printer, keeping the receipt as a business expense. My tax advisor, Betty Jorgensen, helped me understand what counted as a valid business expense. I made sure to follow her advice closely. By Thursday morning, I had finished the 5 manuals and returned them with translations to Mr. Louis. I picked up 6 more, taking a look at the machines before I left. I was starting to wonder how many machines he had and how long this work would last. I had worked 46 hours by Thursday, bringing my weekly earnings to almost $4,000, and with the 6 new jobs, I expected to make even more. I was working hard in my home office. Leah barely saw me from morning till night. I'd come out for dinner, help with the dishes, and talk a bit, but I was mostly out of sight. For the first few weeks, Leah was curious. She went from not caring about my work to being intrigued as she saw how hard I was working. Naturally, she had questions. "How often do you get paid?" she asked. "I get paid for each job I finish. I'm a contractor, so I get the full amount and handle taxes and expenses myself. Could use some help right now." "Money's tight, since you lost your job," she said cautiously. "Okay, how much do you need? Can you spare $1,000? Yeah, I think so," I replied carefully. For some reason, I wasn't in a rush to tell Leah how well the business was doing. I was making almost $3,000 a week, working 50 hours. My bank account was nearly $155,000. If Leah knew, she'd probably think differently about my work, but for some reason, I decided to keep it low-key. I transferred $1,000 from my business account to our joint account and told Leah it was done. She seemed surprised but pleased. I felt good too. It was nice to contribute to the household again after just 2 weeks out of work before finding this new career. I decided to meet with Mr. Louis to discuss the future of the business. I was worried it might dry up, and I'd be back at square one. The meeting went well. He had more complex machines coming in, which meant more work for me. I could relax. He assured me it would be a long time before we ran out of manuals. The weather turned warm again, and I was sitting on my balcony enjoying my coffee when Megan Willow's cheerful voice caught my attention. "Hey, where have you been? Come on over. I'll tell you all about it," I said, feeling very pleased with myself. My life was back on track. Megan came in through the back door, poured herself a coffee, and joined me on the balcony. "I haven't seen much of you lately," she said, curious. "No, I've been busy with my new job. You're now talking to the president and only employee of Precise Word Services Inc." Megan laughed just as I hoped she would at my grand announcement. "Seriously, Jake, the president? I can't believe it. I'm telling the truth. I started the business, and I'm the boss now." We were having fun with it, and Megan got it right away. "It's good to see you happy, Jake," she said more seriously. "It's been a while. Yeah, I feel like a heavy weight is gone, and I can move forward. It's a good feeling." "How does Leah feel about it?" I looked her straight in the eye. "She doesn't really know yet. She can't decide." "No, I mean, I haven't told her exactly how well the business is doing." "Oh, silence, Megan. Do you remember asking me a question a while ago if it's the one I'm thinking of?" "Yeah, you asked if Leah and I were really happy, and I said it was a good question." "Yeah, I'm not so sure anymore. I haven't told Leah about the money I'm making." "I haven't lied, but I haven't told her either." "Why?" "I don't know. Do you ever get that feeling that something isn't right?" "Yeah, sure. I've had that feeling for a few weeks now. I couldn't quite figure it out, but something felt different." Megan didn't say anything. She just sat there, drinking her coffee and thinking. "Can I ask you something personal, Megan?" "Sure, go ahead." "Do you think you and Leah are happy?" "I mean, really happy?" I stared at my coffee cup and didn't answer. "Never mind, it's none of my business." "I'm sorry I asked," she said quietly. "It's a good question, Megan. A really good one." That's all I said, as I expected. I finished the English version around 11:30 and called Mr. Louis. I told him I'd have the French version done this afternoon and could drop it off at his office. He was surprised and pleased. He told me to come anytime I was ready. That made me feel good about the job. It had been a while since I had written any French, but with my dictionary and a quick lunch, I completed the French version by 2:30 p.m. I reviewed the English version again, then the French one more time. I didn't see any errors, but Mr. Louis would decide that. I dressed in my business clothes and headed to his office to hand in my work. I sat as he looked over my English version, comparing it to the Chinese one he had beside it. I couldn't be sure, but it seemed like he was spot-checking various random paragraphs. I could see him nodding and sometimes marking a word here and there, but overall, he made very few changes. He looked up from my work. "Excellent, Mr. Jake. I will send your French and English versions to our translation service to check if they approve your French. We can make a deal for your services." He called me Mr. Jake from the start because saying faults was hard for him. "How many hours did you spend on this?" he asked. 5 last night and 6 today, 11 in total," I said. "Very well. I will have a check for $660 made out to you. You can pick it up tomorrow," he smiled. I thought we agreed this was a free trial, a test to see if I could do the work. "I am almost sure you can do the work, Mr. Jake. I do not want to take advantage of you. I will pay for good work. I think we can do very good business together." "That's very generous, thank you very much," I said sincerely. "To which company should I make out this check?" he asked. Just to me, I guess, Ethan Fultz." He looked at me seriously for a moment. "May I suggest you form your own company? It will save you much trouble in the future, and it will protect you if there is a problem. I suggest you see a lawyer and get this done. Keep this money separate, you do not want a tax problem, especially if you become successful." He smiled. "I do not take out taxes, you have to handle that. You are a contractor in the eyes of the tax office. Thank you for the advice." "I'll do just that." I stood up and shook his hand. "Please let me know if there is any problem with the French version," I said as I was about to leave. "Do you not want your next assignment?" he asked, looking surprised. Well, yes, of course, if you think I can do the job," I stammered. He smiled. "I think you can. I will be surprised if your French is not as good as your English. I must thank Miss Paula for telling you about me." He gave me another manual, and we walked out back again. After checking the machine and looking at the drawings, I was happy it was a current drawing. We shook hands, and I left for home feeling good. $60 an hour if I worked 40 hours a week, I could make over $120,000 a year. Was there that much work? The stack on Mr. Lou's desk looked pretty big. I couldn't wait to tell Leah, maybe this would change her mind about my work. Leah seemed happy that I was being paid and at a good rate. I told her about the stack of work on his desk waiting for me. It cheered her up quite a bit. Maybe things were looking better for us. I felt really good about the future and us. It's funny how quickly things can go from bad to good. I also wanted to tell Megan, she was the one who had given me the idea. I started work on the next manual the next morning. I was just as eager to start as I had been with the first one. This job was easier first, the machine was simpler, and second, I had learned how to understand what they wanted to say. I finished the English by 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the French before dinner, a total of 8 hours. I would call Mr. Louis first thing in the morning and arrange to give him my work that evening. I called my investment advisor, Carlo Petty, another ex-Montrealer. Carlo, I need your advice. I want to start my own business and need the name of a lawyer who can help me do that. Hey, you're starting your own business, he sounded happy. Yeah, translation services, I explained the job to him, and he was excited. Every time I look at something, it's made in China or somewhere in the Far East, you will always have work. I hope you're right. Now about that contact, yeah, talk to Don Simmons. He's right here in this building. He specializes in business law and can get you set up properly. Also, you will need to talk to Betty about the tax situation. She already does your and Leah's taxes, so she'll know what to do with the new business. Thanks, Carlo. I appreciate your help. Maybe I'll have something to save for retirement this year after all. Good luck, Jake. I think you're going to do well in this venture. We Montreal guys know how to make things happen, right? You know, Carlo, say hi to Monique for me. Talk to you later. I called Mr. Louis the next morning, and he was glad to hear from me. He told me that the French translation was perfect, and he was eager to see my next project. I went to his office later that morning and gave him the next manual. Mr. Louis, can we set up something so that I don't have to drive in every day? I can email my translations to you, but maybe if I took a week's worth of work at a time, I could just send you the finished work when it's done. That would be fine. Also, if you agree, I can deposit your payments directly into your account, so I don't have to write a check, and you get your money right away. That's great, but I have to set up a business account first. I'll let you know when that's done. Then we have a deal. I'm very happy to do business with you, Mr. Jake. Do you want me to have a contract written for your services? I thought about that. Why don't I talk to my business advisor and see what he thinks? I'll let you know. Very well. We shook hands, and I left. After checking 5 new manuals and 5 machines, it took just over an hour, but it was worth my time. One drawing had a missing part, and even though it was for the right machine, I had to note that in my translation. Other than that, the job seemed pretty simple. By the end of the next week, I had a new career and my own business set up. I called it Precise Word Services, not flashy, but it explained what I did. I registered for a GST number with the federal government, set up a separate bank account, and even had some business cards printed. I also designed my own letterhead to print at home on my lawyer's advice. I wrote up a letter of understanding for Mr. Louis, outlining our deal for translations and the hourly rate. I treated myself to a color laser printer, keeping the receipt as a business expense. My tax advisor, Betty Jorgensen, helped me understand what counted as a valid business expense. I made sure to follow her advice closely. By Thursday morning, I had finished the 5 manuals and returned them with translations to Mr. Louis. I picked up 6 more, taking a look at the machines before I left. I was starting to wonder how many machines he had and how long this work would last. I had worked 46 hours by Thursday, bringing my weekly earnings to almost $4,000, and with the 6 new jobs, I expected to make even more. I was working hard in my home office. Leah barely saw me from morning till night. I'd come out for dinner, help with the dishes, and talk a bit, but I was mostly out of sight. For the first few weeks, Leah was curious. She went from not caring about my work to being intrigued as she saw how hard I was working, and naturally, she had questions. How often do you get paid? She asked. I get paid for each job I finish. I'm a contractor, so I get the full amount and handle taxes and expenses myself. Could use some help right now. Money's tight since you lost your job, she said cautiously. Okay, how much do you need? Can you spare $1,000? I replied carefully. For some reason, I wasn't in a rush to tell Leah how well the business was doing. I was making almost $3,000 a week, working 50 hours. My bank account was nearly $155,000. If Leah knew, she'd probably think differently about my work, but for some reason, I decided to keep it low-key. I transferred $1,000 from my business account to our joint account and told Leah it was done. She seemed surprised but pleased. I felt good too. It was nice to contribute to the household again after just 2 weeks out of work before finding this new career. I decided to meet with Mr. Louis to discuss the future of the business. I was worried it might dry up, and I'd be back at square one. The meeting went well. He had more complex machines coming in, which meant more work for me. I could relax. He assured me it would be a long time before we ran out of manuals. The weather turned warm again, and I was sitting on my balcony enjoying my coffee when Megan Willow's cheerful voice caught my attention. "Hey, where have you been? Come on over. I'll tell you all about it," I said, feeling very pleased with myself. My life was back on track. Megan came in through the back door, poured herself a coffee, and joined me on the balcony. "I haven't seen much of you lately," she said, curious. "No, I've been busy with my new job. You're now talking to the president and only employee of Precise Word Services Inc." Megan laughed just as I hoped she would at my grand announcement. "Seriously, Jake, the president? I can't believe it. I'm telling the truth. I started the business, and I'm the boss now." We were having fun with it, and Megan got it right away. "It's good to see you happy, Jake," she said more seriously. "It's been a while. Yeah, I feel like a heavy weight is gone, and I can move forward. It's a good feeling. How does Leah feel about it?" I looked her straight in the eye. "She doesn't really know yet. She can't decide." "No, I mean, I haven't told her exactly how well the business is doing." "Oh, silence, Megan. Do you remember asking me a question a while ago if it's the one I'm thinking of?" "Yeah, you asked if Leah and I were really happy, and I said it was a good question." "Yeah, I'm not so sure anymore. I haven't told Leah about the money I'm making." I haven't lied, but I haven't told her either. "Why?" "I don't know. Do you ever get that feeling that something isn't right?" "I know you, Jake. You're honest. I can see you're hurting. I've seen how Leah treats you when she thinks no one is watching. Maybe you don't notice, but I do. She acts like she's above you. I don't know why, but that's how it looks." "Her parents?" I said quietly. "What, her parents?" "They don't think much of me." "Maybe it's affecting her. They're no kind of royalty or something, no. Her dad works for the city, and her mom works part-time at a market." "Not royalty. Wow, they should be grateful to have you. No one would treat her better than you." "I guess they had big dreams for their daughter." Megan leaned back in her chair and sighed. "What do you do now?" "I have no idea. I still love her, but lately, I'm not sure she loves me. We just aren't close like before. It's like I let her down, and she's given up on me. I hope I'm wrong." "I hope so too, Jake." I had no real reason to be suspicious of Leah. There were no signs of her cheating, but a few weeks later, something felt off. Leah told me the lab was reorganizing, and she would need to work some overtime. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I was happy or not. We seemed to be drifting apart little by little, which made me sad. I was turning 28, and we still hadn't decided to start a family. I wondered if we ever would. I had been working steadily on my translations, but I cut back on night work to spend more time with Leah, even if it was just watching TV. I felt it was important to reconnect. On top of that, I was adding between $800 and $1,000 each week to our joint account. I told her the business was doing well, and I could contribute more. I was billing an average of 9 hours each day, 5 days a week, which made about $2,700 each week before taxes. My account was growing fast, even with my contributions to our joint account. Leah seemed pleased. We were back to where we were before I lost my job. I hoped our relationship would get back to normal too, but despite our better finances, our relationship stayed cool. We were intimate once or twice a week, but that was it, and nothing seemed to change that. Mr. Louis was happy with my work and told me often. We had no complaints about the translations, that was the quality I cared about. As I got better at understanding the broken English from the manufacturers, I found I could do simpler translations faster, so I had more time for myself. If I wanted to have lunch at a deli or a drink at a local bar, I could. I would catch up on work later if needed. I didn't see much of Megan after our serious talk. It was fall, and the weather was cool and rainy. The days were shorter, and I found it easier to focus on work with fewer distractions. I started inviting Megan for morning coffee, and it became a daily routine. It was our private time to talk freely. We were such good friends that we could talk about anything. "How's Leah?" Megan asked. "Same cold as ice," I replied. "Sorry," she said. "Do you think you guys will make it?" I almost want to say no, but I still want to try. "Both of you have to try if it's going to work," she said. "Yeah, I know." "Jake, yeah. She's cheating on you." I froze. Megan would never joke about that. "You know this." "Yeah, I know." "Who is it?" "Her boss, Turnbull, I think his name is." "Yeah, that's him." "How long?" "Not long with him, but he's not the first." "What?" I couldn't think of anything else to say. "I'm kicking all out, Jake. I'm done with him. This isn't the first time, and if I let it go, it won't be the last. I'm looking for a job before I leave him. He will never be good at paying alimony or child support, and I don't want my kids to live in poverty." Wow, Megan. Can this get any worse? I think you asked a similar question when you lost your job, and Leah gave you a hard time about it. What a big mess. Absolutely, she agreed. Well, I guess I have to change my financial plans now. No way I'm giving her anything after this. Let her go live with Bobby Boy, he can take care of her. I don't blame you, just don't do anything that will land you in jail, okay? I count on you for my morning coffee, she smiled. Well, let's see now. You kick all out, I kick Leah out, and we move in together and live happily ever after. I said, half joking. You are forgetting one thing, Jake. The kids. I'm not forgetting. If they don't come, the deal's off, Megan laughed, but I saw tears forming in her eyes. This situation wasn't really funny, but we needed some relief. I laughed with her, it felt good to have someone to talk to. We put aside the issue of our spouses for the night. I had work to finish and needed to figure out how to get through living with Leah until I decided what to do. I felt oddly detached from the emotional chaos. I should have been furious with her, but I was only angry and disappointed, not even surprised, really. I wondered how many others there had been besides Elle and her boss. That evening, I found it easy to act normal around Leah. I didn't change anything in my behavior, I acted just as I would on any other night, and it wasn't hard. When we went to bed, it took me a while to fall asleep, which was unusual. I was thinking about what to do about Leah. The more I thought, the more I wanted proof. It wasn't that I didn't believe Megan, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes if I could. Leah made it easy the next morning. She said she had to work overtime again and wouldn't be home until late. That usually meant around 10 o'clock. I guessed there was no overtime and she was meeting Bobby Boy. I called Megan and told her my plan. Elle wouldn't be home until after 9 o'clock, so I borrowed her car to follow my wife and her friend. I parked in a lot with a view of the clinic's parking lot and got there around 5 o'clock, thinking they'd still be there. Leah's car was there, so I guessed right. About 10 minutes later, she came out with a tall guy in a nice suit. They walked to a car at the other end of the lot and got into a Mercedes. I started the car, ready to follow them. I took a couple of pictures with my camera. I'm no private detective, and a couple of times, I thought I'd lost them. But I got lucky and saw them turn into a hotel parking lot. I hung back until they were in the lobby, then drove up to the front entrance. I watched the guy register, put away his credit card, and then head for the elevators. Both of them had small overnight bags. They weren't going for dinner, just straight up to the room. I drove home. I'd seen enough. I took several pictures of them at the front desk and getting in the elevator. I returned Megan's car and told her what I saw. She gave me a hug and told me to cool down and that we'd talk the next day about what to do. I agreed. I wasn't in the mood to face Leah that night, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Al usually started work at 9 o'clock in the morning, depending on his shift. He'd come home any time from 5 to 9 o'clock at night. That gave Megan and me most of the day to talk about our plans before the kids got home. I was still confused and angry about Leah's betrayal. I wasn't furious, but I wasn't going to let it go. The marriage was over, that was clear. Tell me how you found out, I asked Megan the next morning. Gossip, she said. One of the women who works with Leah figured out she and Turnbull were having an affair and told one of her friends, who told one of my friends who knew Leah was our neighbor. You know how gossip spreads. I don't think Leah realizes how many people know about her affair. Well, what matters is that I know. I was still curious. How did you find out about Al and Leah? The same way. A nosy neighbor, Mrs. Bryson, noticed how often I was here visiting you. I was about to get mad at her when she mentioned how close our houses were. I guess Al had been visiting your place when you weren't home. It takes nerve with me being right here. Anyway, it turns out Al was here when he said he was working. Why Leah would get involved with him, I don't know. Maybe she believed his lies about being a big deal at work. That's all I can think of. I just shook my head, not understanding it any better than Megan did. Do you know if Turnbull is married? She asked. I think he is. I'm sure of it. I don't know much else about him. Megan looked at me for a moment and picked up my phone book. She found Turnbull's number and gave me a mischievous smile as she dialed. Hello, is this Mrs. Richard Turnbull? Silence. I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong number. You don't have a daughter named Felicity, right? Silence. I see. Well, I'm very sorry to bother you. Goodbye. Megan hung up the phone. He's married, and they don't have any kids. I shook my head. This woman was sharp. No surprise Al couldn't fool her. We sat quietly for a few moments. I think we should visit City Hall, Jake, Megan said. I want to see the title on the clinic property. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm just curious about what leverage you might have. You'd be surprised what a title search can show. Let's go if you have the time. All the time in the world, she smiled. It took 10 minutes and $10 to find that the clinic property was in the name of Mrs. Diane Turnbull, and the address matched the home of Robert Turnbull. Well, Megan said quietly. Guess who has the upper hand? The wife owns the building, and he might just be the manager. Very good, Jake, you guessed right. I bet Leah doesn't know that. Yeah, if he's stringing her along, she's in for a nasty surprise when I break up with her. What a shame, Megan chuckled. We left City Hall, and I took Megan for lunch. Being with her made me feel better about myself and my situation. The restaurant wasn't the place to talk about our private matters, so we waited until we were back at the townhouse. So now, what's next? I wondered. Did you take the pictures like I suggested? Megan asked. Yeah, let's look at them, I said as I got my camera and plugged it into my computer. The pictures downloaded and appeared on the screen. We went through them one by one. Well, you didn't catch them in the act, but these ones at the hotel desk and elevator are pretty clear about what they are up to. You could hire a private detective for more proof, but I don't know if it's worth it. Whether you divorce her for cheating or just because you can't get along, it won't change much. You might as well save your money and get ready for the worst. I never thought it would come to this, I said, shaking my head. No one ever does. I couldn't believe Ol would cheat on me either, but he did, more than once. I'm just upset I can't leave him now. I need to find a job first. I have to take care of the kids, Megan. I hope you don't think I'm butting into your business, but I've been thinking about something. I want you to listen with an open mind. Try to look at it without judging. Can you do that for me? I pleaded. She looked at me, focusing on what I just said. I guess so. That's all I can promise, that's all I ask. I nodded in relief. The other day, when I found out the truth about Leah, I joked about us moving in together with the kids. It was just a joke, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. Don't say anything yet, I said quickly as I saw her stand to speak. My income will be over $125,000 a year. I have more work than I can handle, and there's more out there if I need it. I like what I'm doing, and it looks like I'm good at it, so I can keep up this lifestyle without burning out. I don't have to commute, so there's no stress, no deadlines I can't meet. I'm suggesting I buy a 4-bedroom house. I've been looking at it, it's still in the same school district. You and the kids could move in as tenants until you find a job, no strings attached. Jake, that's a lovely thought, but I couldn't do that to you. What about your personal life? What about your future? Surely you don't want to stay single forever, do you? No, of course not. I'm not saying this has to be permanent. If you find a good job and want to move out, you can. At least you'd know you and the kids were safe, and they wouldn't have to change schools. Jake, you know I think the world of you, but this isn't fair to you. If I did that and then moved out, what would you do with a 4-bedroom house? I shrugged. Maybe you decide not to move out. I said, almost cringing when it came out. Megan looked at me, her eyes widening. Are you saying you have feelings for me? She asked carefully. I nodded. Sorry, but yes. Oh no, now I'm really. Oh no, Jake, don't do this to me. Don't mess with my head. This is too much. I haven't even kicked all out, and you're coming on to me. That's not fair. Yeah, I know, but what they did to us isn't fair either. This isn't about fair. This is about what we both know. If the way I feel for you isn't how you feel for me, just say so. Megan sat quietly, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. Had I gone too far, too fast? She stood and wandered around the kitchen and then into the living room, shaking her head and mumbling to herself. That was a good sign, I thought. She hadn't said no, and she hadn't slapped me, so she wasn't sure and she wasn't offended. Damn you, Jake, she finally said, walking toward me. How could you? Those were the last words I heard before she hugged me tightly. If I was going to be comforted, this was the best way. I just held on to her, and she squeezed me tight. When she finally let go, I stood up from my kitchen chair and hugged her. Does that mean yes? I asked. Of course, it does. You idiot, she cried, wiping her tears but smiling. No pressure, Megan. If it works out, great. If not, no hard feelings. She shook her head and looked into my eyes. I'm going to make it work, she said, then started crying again. Me too, I said. I had a feeling we could get through the tough times ahead, and things would change for the better. Chapter 3, Don Simmons suggested I use a family law firm, so I hired them. I decided not to hide my new earnings during the divorce, even though I'd hate giving any money to Leah. I didn't want extra legal trouble if she found out about my new business later. I would be honest but try to avoid paying her alimony. I didn't want to reward her for betraying me. My lawyer was an older woman in her 60s, Mudder Kinsey. She was sharp and looked out for me. I told her everything, and she had an interesting idea. She suggested we bluff Leah, assuming Leah didn't know much about my new job. She might agree to a split of current assets and no alimony. We wouldn't say what those assets were unless asked directly. I could also suggest I wouldn't sue the lab and her boss for interfering. It was worth a try. I told Mudder I would let her know when to serve my wife, and she could prepare the papers. Now, the next week went by without much happening. Leah had 2 more overtime sessions, but I didn't follow her. Mother called to say the papers were ready, and I could serve Leah any time. I thanked her and called Megan. "It's time, Megan. I have the papers, and now I need to figure out how to give them to her. Want to come over?" "Sure, I'll be right there. Get the coffee ready." We sat at the kitchen table with our coffee, chatting about little things. I couldn't delay any longer. "Here's what I'm planning. I'll confront her tonight. I'll tell her I know about Robert Turnbull, and if needed, then I'll give her the divorce papers. If she gets angry, I'll show her the pictures and say I have witnesses. I'm betting Mrs. Turnbull doesn't know about their affair, so my threat to sue might help." Mother said Leah needs to think she has no easy way out. After that, it's all on her. I don't know how she'll react, but I have to be careful not to give away that I'm bluffing. If she gets aggressive, I'll move out, and she can get a lawyer, and we'll fight it out. I hope it doesn't come to that, but you never know with Leah. "Have you packed a bag?" Megan asked. "No, but I will before she comes home. Apparently, there's no overtime tonight." I smirked. Megan gave me a quick kiss and a hug. "Good luck. Tell me everything when this is over. We need to figure out how to handle Ol. That's going to be harder." I nodded. She was right. Ol would be a problem. His pride would be hurt, and he wouldn't give up easily. Megan and I decided she wouldn't move out of their townhouse until things calmed down. If Ol refused to leave, she'd stay in Annie's room until she was ready to go, to keep things simple and show my trust in Mother. I loaned Megan money for Mother's retainer, and we started working together to handle our unfaithful spouses. That night, during our usual dinner, I told Leah I wanted to talk. I saw her tense up, probably thinking it was another "we need to talk" speech. "Leah, I know about your affair with Robert Turnbull. Since you don't respect me or our marriage, I'm divorcing you. Here are the papers," I said calmly. I was surprised at how calm I felt after 7 years together. Her reaction was intense. She gasped for air and coughed. After a bit, she regained her composure. How was all she could say. "You weren't very discreet. Many people, not just your co-workers, knew about your affair with your boss." "Oh God, I'm sorry, Jake. I wish I could say something." "I'm sorry." I shrugged. "I propose we split everything evenly. We can sell the townhouse and split the equity. You can buy me out if you want. I won't be living here again." I was calm and clear-headed. She nodded. "That's fair," she said, unable to look at me. I couldn't resist. "Why didn't you answer right away?" "Maybe you were trying to think of an excuse, but that wasn't it. I thought Robert would give me a better life. He's very successful, and I thought he would give me a better life." I considered crushing her hopes but decided not to. "Do not overplay your hand," were Mother's last words to me. "Well, for what it's worth, I hope you find happiness. You weren't happy with me. It wasn't you, Jake. You were kind and hardworking. You were always there for me, but I guess I just wanted more from life than you could give me." "An upgrade," I said without really thinking. "What?" "No, not that." "Well, maybe Robert is rich. He'll give me a good life after he gets divorced. He's married." I pretended to be surprised. "I'm moving out, Leah. I'll be at a local motel for a while until I find a place to live. If you agree to the settlement, you'll find the papers in here. All you have to do is sign them. You may want to see a lawyer, just for your protection," I said, almost holding my breath. I wanted that offer on the record. No. I won't fight it. I've hurt you, and it's my fault. 50/50ths is fair. I'll sign them tonight. You can take them with you when you go. She still couldn't look me in the eye. I came from the bedroom with my bag. She seemed surprised to see me packed but said nothing. She handed me the signed papers. I checked they were correctly done, then put them in my pocket. If you don't mind, I'll stop by tomorrow and get most of my things. I need to download my files from the computer too. No, of course not. This is still your house, Jake. She looked at me finally, and the sadness in her eyes almost made me change my mind. She looked so defeated. I took a step toward her, leaned in, and kissed her cheek. Goodbye, Leah. I turned and walked out the door, closing it quietly behind me. I had won, but I had lost. I would have my freedom, but I lost what I had hoped for. It seemed like such a sad situation, but I knew I could never live with her again after what she had done. I drove to the local motel and went straight to my room. I had checked in earlier that afternoon. I called Mother the next morning and told her about my discussion with Leah. She was glad it had gone so easily, no fighting, no blame game, not even any tears, some regret, some apology, but all in all, a quiet end to my marriage. I thanked her for her advice and hung up. I would drop the papers off on my way to my former home when I let myself in. I knew it was no longer my home. I started packing the rest of my clothes and personal items. I didn't want anything else. Leah could have the pictures of us. The furniture would probably be split equally, so it was just a matter of sorting out who got what when the time came. I sat quietly in my office, thinking about what was happening. I was ending something I had started nearly 8 years ago. I didn't feel good about it. I had to move on with my life, and when I thought about it, I remembered Megan and felt a bit better. I began the slow task of downloading my files onto my new laptop. It would take most of the morning. I had told Mr. Louis that due to personal problems, I would not be able to do any translations until next week. I apologized, but he understood. It was the first time I had not met a deadline. I promised him I would catch up next week, and he was fine with that. I would have plenty of time to work from my motel room. The motel had high-speed internet, so I wasn't at a disadvantage. It wasn't as quiet as the townhouse, but I could manage. I missed my morning coffee with Megan, but we were both being careful until she served all the divorce papers that would be early next week. I did envy Megan that task. We did meet at a coffee place on Friday morning. We then parked in an empty lot to talk. How are you holding up? I asked. Okay. I'm not looking forward to telling all. I decided to do it in the morning after the kids go to school. It's the only time we're alone in the house. Mother gave me some advice on how to handle it. She said I can insist he leave if there's no reasonable place for him to sleep other than our bed. One thing for sure, I'm not having him in my bed any longer than I have to. What about the kids? When and how will you tell them, assuming all will be gone or at work when they get home from school? I'll tell them then. You think they can handle it? Annie will be okay. I found out something else about all that was the last straw. She stopped and sniffed as she sipped her latte. Annie was teased by a classmate the other day. The two girls argued, and when the other girl seemed to be losing, she said something about Annie's father being a regular visitor to one of her friend's mother's house. Annie started yelling at the girl, but the girl stood her ground and said if she didn't believe it, she could ask the mother. Apparently, her name is Mimi Tranter, and she's a divorcee. Megan looked sad and almost defeated. I didn't remember seeing her like this before. How's Annie? I asked. Upset. I calmed her down and told her not to believe everything she hears, but I think she knows, maybe has known for a while. She might be only 10, but kids grow up so fast these days. I'm sorry, Megan. It shouldn't have to happen like that. It won't be easy telling them I'm leaving their father. They'll still get to see him, but he won't be living with us. I nodded. Even though Ol had behaved poorly, taking the kids away from him would still hurt him and them. I knew Megan didn't want to stop Ol from seeing the kids. They asked about you, you know, Megan said after a silence. Oh, I'm surprised. I don't know why they like you a lot. I think being all together will make it easier for them. You're more like a dad than anyone else. Thanks. I'm looking forward to that and having you clothes every day, I said. She took my hand. You said you wanted to see me. What's up? I want you to come with me to look at a house I'm thinking of buying. I want your opinion, especially since you'll be living there. Sure, let's do it. It will take my mind off other stuff, she said with a weak smile. We met the real estate agent at the house at 11 o'clock. We were right on time. I showed Megan the house, pointing out the rooms and areas needing improvement. It wasn't a luxury home, but it was a good size with bedrooms for everyone and 2.5 bathrooms. I was happy it had a 2-car garage and a basement for storage, a playroom, or maybe my office. I like it, Megan said, smiling. It needs some work, but nothing we can't handle. Lots of room for the kids, and a potential playroom in the basement if you want. Okay, you got it, she said quietly, away from the agent. All right, let's go talk business. We'll make an offer and see what happens. It's been on the market for 4 months, and the housing market is slow. We might get a good deal. We told the agent we were ready to make an offer. He seemed excited. I guessed he hadn't had much business lately because of the economy. A live buyer making an offer was a big deal for him. I made a low offer, expecting a counteroffer. This would show how eager the sellers were to sell. There was no furniture in the house, so I thought maybe the owners had 2 mortgages to pay. We left before noon, and Megan offered to buy lunch. I agreed, and we stopped at a sushi bar. Megan joked that she'd never find dull in a place that served bait for food. I laughed. She was getting her old sense of humor back, but I knew it would be temporary. She had to deal with all next week. I wished I could support her, but that wasn't possible. The weekend was long at the motel. Leah was gone from my life, though we weren't close at the end. She was still someone to talk to. Now I was alone and couldn't see Megan, so I was on my own. Saturday, I took a walk along the river to clear my head. I decided to catch up on work, and by Sunday afternoon, I was back on track. Mr. Louis would be happy about that. By Monday morning, I was current with my work. I called Mr. Louis after emailing my last manual, and he was surprised and happy. He wanted to see me soon for a special project. Naturally, I couldn't say no to the man, so we agreed to meet on Tuesday morning. I called Megan. She told me Mother had said all the paperwork was ready, and it was up to Megan to tell all about the divorce. She was about to call me and wanted to meet to discuss her plan. She was very nervous and thought maybe it would be better to have someone else serve all the papers, but Megan refused. No, absolutely not. He'd go crazy, and anything could happen. No, this is something I have to do myself. Maybe I can make him understand how much he's hurt me and the children. I won't change my mind, and I won't forgive him. He brought this on himself. I let him get away with it before, and he hurt me again. Fool me once, that's it. I wish I could be there to help, but I knew Megan understood my offer was sincere but impossible. I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. I don't think I'll sleep thinking about what I have to do, but I can't have the children witness this. I won't let someone else do it for me. That would be cowardly. No, I just have to suck it up and get it done, she said. Tuesday morning, I got up, followed my usual routine, grabbed my laptop, and headed to the restaurant next to the motel. I decided to cheat and have a full breakfast: eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. It was the $33.99 special. I laughed, still trying to save money despite my newfound prosperity. I had a second cup of coffee, letting rush hour pass before heading to Mr. Lou's office. I wondered how Megan was doing with all. I didn't envy her, but she insisted on doing this herself. She was very strong, and the idea that we might grow closer was exciting. I met Mr. Louis just after 9 o'clock that morning, and he surprised me. He was thinking of bringing in a line of light and medium-duty tractors, backhoes, loaders, and forklifts from China. The manuals for these machines would be bigger and more complex than any I'd done before. At first, I was unsure. I don't know, Mr. Louis, this is a very big project. I'm not sure I could handle this alone. I don't think I know enough about the equipment to write the manuals correctly. I don't know what to say, I said, feeling sorry. Mr. Jake, you are very good at your work. Can you find people to help you? I will pay $100 per hour. There will be many hours to do this work. I know I trust only you to do it right. Many dollars for you if you can do this, he said, sounding desperate. I needed to find a way to do it. The money was too good to pass up. Mr. Louis, I can't promise anything, but let me think about how it can be done. Let me see one of the manuals they have prepared, and then I can tell you if I can help. Thank you, Mr. Jake. I trust you. You are very good for me and my business. I left and took one of the forklift manuals home. At least I knew a bit about forklifts. I had used them years ago in customer service. As I drove, I suddenly thought of Megan. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I pulled out my cell phone and searched for her number. I paused before calling. What if Ole was still there? What if things had gone really bad? If I called and Ole answered, I could just hang up, but what would he think? No, I had to wait until I reached her place. If Ole was there, his car would be outside, giving me a heads up. I drove my Camry faster than usual, glancing at my watch. If I kept this pace, I would be at her townhouse by 10:30. As I turned into the cul-de-sac, I saw no sign of Ole's Malibu. I didn't relax yet. I parked a few doors down and called Megan's number. It rang twice before she answered. Hello, her voice was soft and quiet. Megan, it's Jake. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm okay. Can you come over? I could use some company. I'm almost at your door. I just wanted to make sure Ole wasn't still there. No, Ole's gone. Come on in. The coffee's ready. She sounded so down. I was relieved she was okay but worried about what had happened. I parked the car and walked to the back door and went in like I always did. Megan was at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. She looked awful, her eyes red and her face full of sorrow. Hi, I said as I poured myself a coffee and sat down next to her. What happened? She looked at me and shook her head. He completely fell apart, Jake. He broke down crying and asking what he would do without me. He was begging me to give him another chance. It was so sad that I cried too. Did he agree to leave? I asked. Yes, he tried to lie to me, saying I had it all wrong and that someone was setting him up. But I told him I knew about Leah and that's why she was divorcing him. He looked like he was going to be sick. Then I brought up other things, and he almost fainted. That's when he lost it. That sounds awful. How are you now? I don't feel great, Jake. Like you, that's 10 years gone, 10 years I can't get back. I feel both angry and sad. There's a big difference between your 10 years and my 7, I said. Oh yeah. Like what? Like Annabeth and Bradley. She looked at me, and I saw tears forming. I took her hands and squeezed them gently. Hold on, Megan. Hold on. Now it was Megan's turn to break down. All I could do was hold her and let her cry. She needed to get it all out. She was strong and would be okay in the end. It would still hurt, but she would move on with her life. Talk to me, Megan. Tell me what happened. She calmed down enough to speak and leaned into me as I held her. I thought to myself, if we only remained good friends, it would be a missed chance. She was special, and I admired and loved her. Now the question was, what kind of love? She began to tell me the story. She had all sit in the kitchen while she told him she was getting a divorce. He was shocked at first, but then he tried to talk his way out. But Megan was too smart and ready for him. When he saw he couldn't win her over, he tried to play the sympathy card, talking about the kids and their years together. But Megan said his acting made it easier for her. He was so fake that she didn't feel bad about calling him out for his actions. In the end, Ol was a mess. Megan had even packed a bag with his things and told him to leave and not come back until she said so. Ol thought it was a short-term thing, but when she gave him the divorce papers, he realized it was for good. The only thing he would come back for was the rest of his clothes and things, and Megan would watch to make sure he didn't take anything he shouldn't. He looked defeated when he left, dragging his suitcase behind him. "I wish I had been here for you," I said. "No, Jake. I had to do this myself. It wasn't fun and it wasn't easy, but it was something I had to handle alone. Don't blame yourself because I'm upset. I know you mean well, but it had to be done and it had to be done quickly." "Well, I guess you and I are about to start the rest of our lives," I said. "I'm just happy that I still have you, even if it's just for a while." She gave me a serious look. "Are you having second thoughts about us?" she asked. "Of course not. It's your choice, Megan. Whatever happens between us, it will always be your choice, Jake." "Fultz, what a cop-out. First, you tell me you have feelings for me, then you leave it all on me. What kind of person are you?" she demanded. I looked at her and couldn't help it. I had a small smile on my lips. She couldn't help it either. I saw it in her eyes. She wrapped her arms around my neck, and we shared a long kiss. "I don't think we'll be separated anytime soon," epilogue. As I expected, the offer on the house was counted, but not too far from my ideal price. Our agent recounted, and the deal was done when they accepted. I now owned a 4-bedroom house in a very nice neighborhood. I'm almost embarrassed at how easily I got over my divorce from Leah. I've concluded that I never really loved her, not like my parents love each other, not how I imagined loving a wife. The depth of emotion just wasn't there on either side. I haven't seen Leah since the divorce papers were signed. The final decree will come in February. I heard that she and Bobby Boy left with very little, except his Mercedes. His soon-to-be ex-wife now runs the lab, and it's business as usual. I guess Leah lost her dream twice. Ol is still working at the Chevy dealer, but he is a different person these days. His divorce from Megan will be final in March. He visits his children every week but keeps a low profile otherwise. It seems the single life isn't as great as he hoped. Megan cut him some slack at my suggestion. She's not asking for alimony or child support, despite his behavior. Neither Megan nor I would get any satisfaction from kicking him while he's down. Our income is more than enough, and Ol needs every penny he can earn. He still has mortgage payments and loaded credit cards. Playing around came at a high price. Megan and I are a different story. I thought about what makes her so attractive to me. She's bigger than Leah, curvier, and more feminine. She gives and gives a lot. I will never understand why Ol would want to fool around on her. Just give him the dumbass award forever. I love that woman like crazy, and I will fight to keep her. Megan doesn't do things halfway. When she says she's in love with me, I'm not going to argue. I'm glad I'm fit because I never want to disappoint her. We didn't need the 4th bedroom as a bedroom for long. Megan sat down with the kids after she kicked Ol out and explained what would happen. Annie knew about her father's stupidity and was less upset than Brad, but both needed reassurance that they would still see their father. Brad was quiet for a few days but gradually adapted when Megan told the kids they would be moving to a new house with a big backyard and a play area in the basement and still go to the same school. They were okay when she told them I would be living with them. Brad cheered, and Annie nodded. They seemed to have the same feelings toward me that I had toward them. Megan said kids pick up on adult vibes, and they knew how I felt about them. We moved into the new house just after Halloween. I took Annie and Brad out for trick or treat in their old neighborhood. It was fun to watch them go door to door. They always said, "Thank you," and often recognized kids from school. There was no sign of Ol that night. I think he couldn't handle it. I used some cash to hire proper movers to get us settled into our new home. Leah and I had decided on what furniture we would split, and I chose not to argue about small things. Ol was now living with a friend and had no room for furniture. We did him a favor by taking their stuff to our new house and making sure he got half the current value. At the end of it all, I only had to buy a TV for the kids and some things for the dining room and kitchen. Christmas isn't far away, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sure I'll spoil Megan, Annie, and Brad terribly, but if I'm careful, I won't get too much heat from Megan. She knows how I feel about them, and I think that's what makes our new life so much easier, that and the closeness, of course. I used to have a once-a-week or so dull experience. Megan, though, is more. What's the word? Energetic. When it comes to being close, another word I could use is free-spirited. Let's just say I'm doing great. Thank you. Megan likes to talk a lot when we are close, so to keep the kids from hearing, I set up my office in the bedroom between ours and theirs. We also found the perks of working from home during the day. Our fun time has moved to midday, and let me say, it really is fun. Oh yes, my new job. I found a man who speaks many languages and is an engineer. He's perfect for Mr. Lou's project, and we met with my boss to discuss how to do it. The outcome is that I now have a contract to make maintenance guides in English, French, and Spanish. It seems Mr. Louis is interested in the American market. I have several years of work ahead of me, not all for Mr. Louis, of course. Other people have found out about my skills, and I will need to expand to meet the demand. Now it's not just for imports but exports too. Megan is my personal assistant, and I couldn't have picked a better person. She is great at handling meetings, plans, and money. My partner is truly my partner. Lastly, to the joy of the kids, Megan and I are getting married. We'll do it during spring break for the kids, and we'll do it in Hawaii. I'm bringing my parents and my brother out for the event. Meg's mother is a widow, and she'll be there too. I heard she never liked Ol much, so I guess I'm starting fresh with her this time. It's going to last this time. It's forever. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.